much time does it take to impact a young person's life? Does it take an entire school year or maybe a whole sports season? Is it possible that a single conversation could change somebody's life? Once, when I was little, another little kid said to me, "How come your mom doesn't know the difference between yellow and jello?" This was curious. I was pretty sure my mom knew the difference between the color and the food. And although my mom always ruined jello by putting fruit in it, I was pretty sure she did this because the people who introduced her to jello introduced her to this terrible Midwestern practice. "What do you mean?" I asked my friend. "She made jello for dinner. She called it yellow, but it was actually red." This wasn't the first time my mom's Spanish accent led to confusion. Growing up in rural Nebraska, I heard things like, "Can you actually understand your mom?" And "You're lucky you speak such good English." When people said stuff like this, I didn't stand up for my mom, and I didn't get mad. I got embarrassed. These interactions, quick as they were, impacted me and made me want to use my good English to be better than the people who said this stuff to me. But my mom, wise woman that she is, would laugh when I told her these things. She would say, "Oh, Marcella, don't be embarrassed. I'm not ashamed of my accent because I know that anybody with a foreign accent is smart enough to speak at least 2 languages." And when my mom started taking college classes, starting over here in the United States after leaving medical school in Columbia, I proofread her papers and critiqued her way too harshly. She would joke with me again, saying, "Marcella, I hope you never become a teacher. Because if you help your students the way you help me, they will never want to write again." I didn't want to be a teacher as a kid, but when I became a teacher, when I began to work with adult students like my mom, non-native English speakers who had to start over here in the United States, my mom's advice was at the front of my mind every time I helped a student find their words. Her comments and this shared experience helped make me the educator I am today. And it's a good thing my mom gently helped me see this flaw in my feedback so that I could better serve my future students. One of them was a student I'll call D. D was from Sudan, and after losing his family, he spent his adolescence in a refugee camp, a time that interrupted his basic education and compounded the psychological traumas he had already experienced. When I met him, D was working full-time, overnights at a local meatpacking plant, getting up in the morning and going to college full-time before going home and going back to work overnight again. It seemed like an impossible cycle to me, but D was an exemplary scholar. He was also the first student to really teach me about the weight some students carry with them, things we will never know unless they feel safe enough to open up to us. Even though I spent a whole semester with D, I would argue it was the short, in-between moments that really built our relationship and allowed us to learn from one another. Now, I know there are books about mentorship, and there are workshops that teach you how to develop your mentor skills. There are other TED Talks about this topic. But right now, I want to encourage you to believe that any moment with a young person is an opportunity to become a mentor and help that person think about how they'll build their skills and their future. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. You see, I believe that mentorship is a process of development, and that does take time. But mentorship is also about using your lived experience to see something in someone that they might not see in themselves, and then encourage them to develop those skills that you can already see. So when my mom went back to school and started working on her master's degree, no longer asking for my esteemed opinions on her writing, I was participating in 4-H, a leadership development program for rural kids. One day, one of the adults who helped with our youth instructor program encouraged me to become secretary. I didn't want the responsibility of paying attention during meetings or taking notes, but his comment got me thinking, I like to write. Maybe it would look good on a college application someday. Today, I know the skills I learned as secretary helped me develop into the person that I am today. He didn't spend one-on-one time with me. He didn't do things with me outside of this program, but I know that he made an impact because he saw a glimmer of a skill in me and suggested I run with it. I've been working in higher education for 13 years now, but like I said, I had no desire to be a teacher. I was bored in high school, and I got in trouble a lot, getting suspended from sports, and speech, kicked out of driver's ed, dances, for alcohol and pot-related reasons. But my sophomore year, our local newspaper editor gave me a job. I think she understood what it was like to not see a path for myself in agriculture like everyone else in my community. She believed in me, and she coached me into believing in myself and believing that I could be a journalist and get paid for telling stories if I went to college to learn how to do it well. But my mom, who enrolled in college as a non-traditional student from another country, and my dad, who was successful but didn't go to college, were of little help in planning for this next step. In fact, they couldn't really envision the college life I wanted at all. They wanted me to commute an hour away to the local community college so that they could keep an eye on me. There was nothing wrong with the community college, but it didn't have a journalism program. Lucky for me, my high school guidance counselor helped me convince my parents that I should look for a school with a journalism program. She knew that if I studied something I was passionate about, I could find a meaningful career. So it's not hyperbole when I say I think she helped save my life. None of these adults had lunch with me every day. They didn't pick me up and take me places to do things. Back then, I didn't even think of them as mentors. But they all taught me that even small bursts of focused guidance can change a person's life. My professional experience reinforces this belief that small bursts have big impact. And I've noticed that non-native English speakers and first-generation college students can benefit greatly from even these short, guided interactions. In general, what I'm talking about when I say a first-generation college student is somebody who is the first in their family to go to college. This is an important designation because studies show that first-gen students make up about 40% of the college population across the United States. These students, without the guidance of a family member who navigated college ahead of them, complete college at lower rates than their peers with parents who have degrees. They have fewer social networks. They are also more likely to experience poverty than peers whose parents graduated from college. Other research tells us that first-generation college students struggle with family conflict, guilt, and shame about their desire to go to college. Parents who don't see the value in college might be dismissive of their child's desire. Peers might say things like, "Ooh, going to college? You think you're better than the rest of us?" Furthermore, we know that students who are non-native English speakers and first-gen students are 30% less likely to enter and graduate college than their peers with parents who have degrees. These challenges are problematic for everybody because today's technologically driven jobs require specialized training. Our workforce needs people, all people, to have opportunities to develop their skills. The World Health Organization agrees that education is the foundation for our economic growth, but it also acknowledges that education is the foundation for personal well-being across the lifespan. Education is the foundation for societal health as a whole. So it's a problem when a young person from any background doesn't see college or some sort of training afterwards as part of their future. Research also tells us that students whose parents completed college at any level are more prepared to go on and pursue some sort of training or college after they complete high school. And yet so many young people don't have the guidance they need to understand the importance of education or additional training. Their parents may even want them to go to college, but like my parents, maybe they don't have the experience necessary to understand what college success looks like. They may not be aware of the deadlines or paperwork or even the options there are for people who can help them guide that process. Some of the farm kids I know fall into this category. One of them, I'll call him Oliver, asked for help with a speech during his sophomore year of high school. I gave him some input, and 2 years later, when he told me that he had applied but hadn't heard back from Southeast Tech, where I work, I checked. It turns out Oliver had filled out the inquiry form, not the application form. Without the generational knowledge, he didn't know that there was a difference. Today, he's doing well, and his parents are super supportive. But we know that where knowledge is lacking, that support can make all the difference for our first-gen students. In fact, according to a joint study by UCLA and the American Academy of Pediatrics, if parents simply believe their children will go to college, they will steer them towards choices to help them do well. Choices such as AP classes, advanced math, tutoring, and more. This same study found that when parents talk to their children positively about college as early as kindergarten and provide early exposure to the idea of college, whether that's taking them to an art exhibit or a sporting event or something else on a campus, those children are more likely to do well in math and reading and see themselves as college material as early as kindergarten. Hearing all this, you might be thinking, everybody I know went to college, so I don't think I know any of these first-generation college students. You might be thinking, I don't know any immigrants, or I don't know any farm kids. How am I supposed to help? I'm fortunate to oversee a peer mentorship program at Southeast Tech, and I also help coordinate one of the events where 8th graders come to campus for a day. Some of these students come from our Title I schools. These are schools that have an alarmingly high percentage of students who qualify for free and reduced price breakfast and lunch. These are those students who are living in poverty. After each visit from these 8th graders, I have a couple of teachers tell me this was the first time some of my students have ever stepped foot on a college campus, and they're 8th graders. For 13 years, I've worked with students from all backgrounds, farm kids, immigrants, children who grew up with privilege, and I will tell you that even the lawyer's kid, whose future seems very clear, has moments of uncertainty about what they're going to do. The cheerleader who is always smiling is worried about how she's going to find a new job far from home. The child of immigrants who speaks good English might be getting pulled out of classes to help their parents translate. So based on these experiences, I want to leave you with a few tips for being a mentor, even if you think you don't have a lot of time. First, recognize that mentorship can be formal and intentional, but the opportunity to build a relationship and change somebody's life can happen once a month in the time it takes to drive the babysitter home. Tell them they're really good with kids and ask them if they've considered going into education. Mentorship can happen in minutes when the kid bagging the groceries next to you asks you a question and you ask if they've found an internship for the summer. Second, recognize your privilege and use it for good. If you are lucky enough to have a college degree or a meaningful career without a college degree, share your experience with the young people in your life so that they can find their own track through their skills. And make sure to share your failures. Research tells us that for all college students, regardless of age or background, the greater the fear of failure, the more they procrastinate and the less they reach their goals. Third, draw on your social capital to connect youth to new ideas and new people. If the babysitter says they like kids but they don't want to teach, help them think about how they can use their patience and people skills in another way. If that kid bagging groceries says, "What's an internship?" connect them to the person at your office who oversees internships or somebody who recently completed one. And use your own networks to ask peers who mentor what programs they go through. I'd be happy to point out some of the programs that I know of. Finally, be aware of how you move in the world. Every interaction you have with a young person is an opportunity to help them understand how their skills and interests can grow with a little bit of guidance. You can make a difference in ways you can't even understand. And good or bad, those interactions will forever stick out like chunks of pineapple in red Jell-O.